All right, class, welcome. Today, we are diving deep into something that, on the surface, might look like boring legal fine print, but is actually one of the most powerful forces in corporate finance. We're talking about debt covenants. Understanding these is absolutely essential for anyone who wants to make smart business decisions.
So to get us started, let's think about this question. When a company decides it needs a huge injection of cash, we're talking tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars, who really gets to make the rules? Now, your first thought might be, well, it's about the interest rate, right? And when the money gets paid back. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole power dynamic at play here. And we need to understand that the entity with the capital, well, they have a lot of leverage. You see, from the creditor's point of view, their concern goes way, way beyond just getting their principal and interest payments on time. Just imagine for a second that you just lent a company $50 million. That money is now out there, at risk. So what you really care about is how that company behaves for the entire life of that loan. You need to make sure they don't suddenly make some crazy risky bet that could jeopardize your entire investment. And this brings us right to the heart of the issue, what we can call the lender's dilemma. How do you, as the lender, provide the capital a company needs to grow, while at the same time protecting yourself from that company's future decisions? I mean, how do you make sure that the management team is going to continue to operate in a financially sound way long after they've cashed your check?
Well, the solution, and this is the core concept for today, is a formal contractual tool called the debt covenant. Now let's break this definition down because every single word here matters. First, restrictions. These aren't suggestions, they are legally binding rules. Placed by creditors. This again highlights that power dynamic we talked about. On the company's financial activities. This is incredibly broad. It can cover everything from taking on new loans to selling off assets. And the whole point of this? To protect their interests. Let's really focus on that phrase, to protect their interests. This is the fundamental motivation. It's not about being mean or controlling just for the sake of it. This is pure risk management. You have to remember, a lender's primary goal is capital preservation. They are not like an equity investor who's looking for a massive payday from a risky venture. No, they are debt holders. They want a steady, predictable return. And these covenants are the guardrails they build around their investment to make sure that happens.
Okay, so we've established what covenants are and why they exist. But what do these things actually look like in the real world? How does a creditor turn this abstract idea of protection into a specific, enforceable rulebook that a company has to live by every single day?
Well, like I said, these covenants are not vague. They are laser-focused on specific actions that could increase the lender's risk. They're designed to prevent a company from suddenly taking on way too much debt, or maybe from running out of the cash it needs to pay its day-to-day bills, and, of course, its loan payments to the bank. Here we've got two classic examples that you will find in pretty much any major loan agreement. Now, these generally fall into two categories. The first is a negative covenant, which restricts an action. It says, you cannot do this. The second is an affirmative covenant, which requires an action. It says, you must do this. Let's dig into the logic behind both of these. Okay, let's do a quick role play. Imagine you are Bank A. You've just lent a company $10 million. You're feeling pretty good, you're the main creditor. But then, what if that company goes across the street to Bank B and borrows another $20 million? And then to Bank C for another 30. All of a sudden, the company is buried in debt. If things go south and the company goes bankrupt, there's a whole line of creditors waiting to get paid. Your original loan is now much, much riskier because your claim on the company's assets has been watered down. This negative covenant is designed to prevent exactly that. It protects your place in line. Now, for the affirmative covenants, I want you to think of these as a mandatory, regular financial health checkup. See, waiting for a company to actually default on a payment is a lagging indicator. By then, the trouble has already happened. So instead, lenders use financial ratios as leading indicators. They give the lender an ongoing, real-time signal of the company's financial stability. If a key ratio starts to slip, it's like an early warning system that allows the lender to step in before things get really bad. And this table here illustrates that perfectly. Let's take the current ratio. That's your current assets divided by your current liabilities. A creditor is obsessed with this because it answers a very simple, very important question. Does this company have enough cash and other liquid assets to pay its bills over the next year? Now, a very common mistake I see students make is they just calculate the number. They'll say the current ratio is 1.7. As a future decision maker, you have to understand the story that number tells.
A covenant might say that the current ratio can never ever fall below 1.5. If it hits 1.49, you're in breach. Or look at debt to equity. This is all about leverage. A creditor wants to know that the owners have enough skin in the game. If this ratio gets too high, say it climbs above 2 to 1, it means the company is financed with twice as much debt as equity. That signals to the lender that in a downturn, the owners have less to lose than they do, and that makes a creditor very, very nervous.
So I hope you're starting to see that what this all comes down to is a fundamental tension. It's a real balancing act. It's a negotiation, right? On one side, you have the lender who wants the maximum possible protection. And on the other side, you have the company's management team who needs enough flexibility and freedom to actually run and grow the business.
And this comparison really lays out that duality, that two-sided coin. For the creditor, a covenant is a shield. It's a monitoring tool. It's their safety net. But for you, as the future CEO or CFO of that company, it is a constraint. It's a set of financial rules that can dictate whether you're even allowed to acquire a competitor or launch a new product or even pay dividends to your own shareholders. Understanding both sides of this is absolutely crucial when you walk into that room to negotiate for finance.
And this right here, this brings us back to the whole point of this course. This is why it's called accounting for decision-making, not just accounting. As a manager, you have to be able to read these loan documents, interpret these covenants, and model their impact on your business. Before you make any big strategic move, you have to ask yourself, will this action cause us to breach one of our covenants? If we launch this new factory, what will that do to our debt-to-equity ratio? Do we have enough cash to keep our current ratio above the floor? Because failing to ask those questions can lead to disastrous consequences. Everything from huge penalty fees to the bank calling the loan and demanding immediate repayment of the entire thing.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to really chew on. Are these covenants a necessary safeguard that promotes financial discipline and actually protects the whole economic system? Or are they a kind of business straitjacket that stifles innovation and stops a company from taking the calculated risks that it needs to take to grow? The real answer, of course, is that they're both. And learning how to navigate that delicate balance, well, that's one of the most important skills you can develop in corporate finance.